In the spirit of Inktober, I thought I would follow a theme, and this month, for this year, we're going to be focusing on Jumbies. A Jumbie, in Caribbean folklore, is a mythological spirit or demon. There are many different types of Jumbies, but they typically arise from the spirits of evil people. On my island of Barbados, Jumbies are also known as duppies. They are dark, shadowy figures of old who terrorize the night, seeking to trick, maim, or kill unsuspecting victims. The word duppy is a name of African origin, used commonly on the Caribbean islands of Barbados and Jamaica. The word most likely comes from the Ga language of Ghana, where the word adope literally means dwarf. But in Ghanaian folklore, spirits are dwarves. Hi, welcome friends, and today I'm going to be talking about some of my little minions in the Caribbean. Douens are the spirits of young children who die before they're baptized. And now they wander in the forests with their feet turned backwards. They're typically small, about the size of a toddler, typically naked, wearing a large straw hat that hides their face. You can tell them by their backward feet and awkward gait. It is said that under their large hat, they have no face except for a tiny wrinkled mouth. As spirits with unfulfilled childhoods, they mainly target children, attempting to lure them to their death so they too can become douens. They lure children away into the forest with sounds of laughter and playful calls. Parents are warned not to call their children's names out loud lest the douens hear. And children are taught not to follow if they hear their name being called from the bush. If a child follows, the voices will keep receding farther and farther, deeper and deeper into the forest until they can no longer find their way home. It's story time. Crack! Came the sound of another strike of the ball against a thick cricket bat. Naya sat bored under the trees in Mr. McGregor's yard, listening to the boys' raucous calls as they played their game. The two batsmen ran the length of their makeshift cricket pitch, and she yawned. In her boredom, she decided to head home. It's not like she was even interested in playing cricket, and the boys weren't interested in having her play. The sun was low in the sky as she rounded the house and entered her backyard. Her baby brother was there, stooping down with the toddler from next door. She shook her head. They were both in various stages of undress, playing with all manners of things in the dirt. "Mummy's inside?" Naya asked. "She's making dinner," Ronaldo babbled back. "Then it's bath time for you," she replied. "Miguel, it's time to head home," she said to the other boy. "Okay," drawled the other toddler. Her brother pouted at her, babbling in protest at the prospect of leaving his various mud creations. She shooed him inside, sighing in relief when he finally disappeared into the house. There were still clothes on the line, and a half-filled clothes hamper on the step. Her mum had probably abandoned the clothes to go check on the pot. She started picking them up. There'd be hell to pay if dew fell on them and her mum realized she hadn't helped. When she was finished, she wrestled the big basket up the step and plopped it inside near the back door. The welcome smell of Mum's cooking was in the air. "Could you check and make sure Ronaldo got dressed?" Mum asked. Yes, Mummy, she answered, making sure to scowl out of her mother's line of sight. She peeked into the bedrooms. Nothing. There was no naked toddler running around in the living room, and no running water in the bath. Did he go back outside? She wondered. I don't see him, Mummy. I'm going to go check if he went back out into the yard. Mum mumbled an, okay, stirring her pot absent-mindedly. Naya ventured to the back door and raised a quizzical eyebrow. Ronaldo's slippers were still there. This didn't actually mean anything, though. He often went without his shoes. There was only a small amount of orange left in the sky, and high overhead the first stars were beginning to appear. Ronaldo! She shouted. The sound of crickets was her only answer back. Ronaldo! She called again. Her eyes scanned the backyard. Nothing. Then she heard something. The faint hooting and hollering of children playing. She turned to the sound. It had come from the tree line. Her heart squeezed in apprehension a bit. The adults always warned them away from the forest. All manners of things lurked in there, from wild animals that could eat you, to the unknown, duppies, scary, vengeful spirits. Of course, they never completely listened to the adults. They played in the forests, many times in fact, but they made sure to never wander too far away, taking great care to always mark their paths. She wasn't sure if they feared what the adults warned them of, or the fear of their parents more. She walked to the tree line and called again. Ronaldo! The childish giggles stopped, and her brother called back. Naya? She breathed a sigh of relief and stepped into the brush. He was nearby, probably just lured back into the yard by his curiosity. She should have closed the door. It's time to come inside, she said aloud. Did you dress? She caught sight of his chubby little belly and naked shoulder as he darted away. I guess not. There were more giggles and childish hooting. Hoot, 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 hoot. She guessed he was with some more young kids from the neighborhood. It's time for you guys to go home. It's getting late, man. She caught sight of a big floppy straw hat that one of the kids was wearing. He didn't look like Ronaldo, but she ran after him anyway. If she could just catch one of them, she could convince them to end their game. She ran and ran, following the naked little child, until her legs grew tired and she lost them in the bush again. She stopped and stamped her foot into the ground. Ronaldo, this is not funny. Come to me this instant. There was a defiant little, no! Ronaldo? Naya? Came the mischievous reply back. It was from another direction. She thought she saw his bare shoulders and the back of his head dart away into the bush again. More giggling. How many of you are out here anyway? She yelled. The trees in the distance were starting to merge into indistinguishable shapes in the vanishing light, and she stopped after a minute. The situation was starting to feel not so good. Ronaldo? She called more cautiously. She was greeted by more childish laughter. She caught a glimpse of the child with the hat on her left. There was a rustle to her right. More giggles came from behind her, and she spun around and around, trying to catch a glimpse each time. Suddenly, there was a child in front of her. He was naked, and his big floppy hat obscured his face. He stood there silently, facing her. He was little more than 3 feet tall, clearly a toddler. But as a second ticked by in silence, her discomfort grew. She realized the laughter had stopped, and slowly he raised his pudgy little finger to point right at her. Then he stepped forward, and her heart plunged into her stomach. His feet were backward. She turned heel and ran. Stories from Granny of duppies came flooding back to her, of vengeful little spirit children that tried to lead other children astray. She had fallen for it. Her heart pounded in her ears as she crashed through the bush. The sound of children's laughter grew louder and louder. Tears sprang to her eyes as she realized how little light she had left. She just needed to make it back to the house. Just make it back to the house. Just make it back to the house, she chanted in her head. No! One of the children popped out next to her, and she screamed. She stumbled and veered to the right, but she kept running. The laughter continued, and it sounded so menacing now. Another child just seemed to appear straight ahead of her. She screamed again, turning, and slipped. She felt the sharp pain as her ankle twisted. She hadn't seen the edge of the gully in the dark. She tumbled. Down and down she seemed to fall. She bounced against rocks, got smacked by leaves. Twigs and branches scratched at her as she continued her descent. When she finally came to a stop at the bottom, everything hurt. The coppery taste of blood filled her mouth. Her face hurt in several places. It hurt to breathe or shift in any meaningful way. Hopeless tears filled her eyes. And then she saw them. 5 children ambled towards her on their distorted legs, feet turned backward. Their floppy straw hats bobbed as they came closer. The tallest one approached her and crouched. Even in the low light, she could see under the hat, and she shuddered, leaning away from him and weeping openly. His face was basically featureless. His skin was dry and craggy, sunken where his eyes and nose should be. "Mommy!" she cried helplessly, and his tiny wrinkled mouth curved up into an unnerving smile. And now she's with me. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed today's story. I thought a clown look would be like the perfect thing for little demon Pied Piper to go along with these little spooky children. The story this time was actually a short story written by moi. So if you liked it or you have any critiques, leave some comments down below. Let me know what you think of today's video, if you enjoyed it, if you were a bit creeped out. What did you think of the illustration? Leave all that in the comments for me below. And like the video if you did enjoy. Maybe even subscribe. I'm going to be doing this for the rest of October. So stay tuned. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week.